Welcome everyone to a virtual chapter meeting, our Q4 virtual chapter meeting. And we're actually going to be covering a really hot conversation subject today, which is going to be sort of the overlap between IT and marketing and digital. And we have a couple of guests who are going to be part of this conversation. Our format for this will be a typical format, except we're not feeding you today, but you can feed yourself. And we're going to go ahead and have the conversation. You are certainly welcome to go ahead and put any questions into the chat, which would really be helpful. And then we'll take them as we get them, and we'll leave some time at the end. We have 45-minute whole thing, so we're probably down to about 40 minutes now. We'll leave some time to do open mic, and you can go ahead at that point and just have the conversation. It's really not a Q&A. It's a conversation yourself. So with that, I would like to introduce Bryn Pearson and Caitlin Zuborowski to our conversation today. And what I'm going to do is let each of you go ahead and introduce yourself, your background, and your organization, and then we'll just get right into it. So, Caitlin, you want to start?
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. Happy to be with you this morning for us. So Caitlin Zuborowski, I work on the product marketing team at Taco Bell out of Irvine in Orange County, California. I've worked with the brand for just over 8 years now in total, have worked in a couple different business units on a few different teams, but always really focused on translating consumer insights to menu and marketing solutions, and then carrying that through the go-to-market process. And as you can guess, with a lot more focus and just increased need to integrate with digital, have loved just getting to work with Bryn and her team and the whole digital crew more often and earlier in the process than we ever had.
Bryn?
Hi, everyone. Bryn Pearson, also over in Irvine, California, at the Taco Bell headquarter office. I head up our omni-channel customer experience on our digital team. Can mean a lot of things, but really a lot of integration between what we're doing with marketing, how our content shows up in our digital channels, and then that whole kind of, I keep using this word, phygital process of bringing the digital and the physical worlds together with our customers. So work closely with Caitlin and her team on product and how to bring that to life in our ordering channels. Been with the brand for 6 years. I started in technology, so understand a little bit of that transition from tech into digital, and definitely know that digital has been kind of the forefront in a lot of our business and just in the industry in general. And so excited to continue to push and innovate in that space.
Well, I'm not going to guess that everybody has the same definition of what is digital. Okay, because I know, for instance, I have debates with people all the time. Is online ordering point of sale, or is it digital, or what is it, right? So perhaps within the Taco Bell experience, could we actually define what is the line of digital and what is IT?
A loaded question. But honestly, the way that we split it is technology is the enabler of the digital brand or digital component of the brand. And so we work very close with our technology partners to bring to life the ideas, the innovation, what we're trying to drive forward from a digital perspective. So we really look at digital as the way the customer engages with the brand in a digital way. And then we use the technology to enable and to really set the foundation for kind of bringing together that digital experience.
Caitlin, did you want to give it from your side?
Yeah, I mean, how I see it's very similar to what Bryn said. I think we see IT and technology more as a support function, incredibly valuable and obviously necessary, but I do think digital and marketing are really driving the prioritization, the strategies, and then we brief in our partners. And if we think of technology and IT similar to how we think of our product developers or our creatives, they're supporting the big marketing ideas and supporting them coming to fruition and going to market.
So, and if I were to simplify this, Bryn is going to make sure that it gets done and it happens, that the infrastructure and the backbone is there. But Caitlin, you're actually working with the customer facing and the marketing side of the delivery of it. Did I get this sort of right?
Sort of. I think it depends what the marketing idea is. So if it's a food product, then my team determines what that is, the positioning, the pricing, how we want to launch it, and we would pass it to Bryn and her team to bring it to life. If it is a digital initiative that doesn't really require a new food item and is more about extending the brand or deepening a customer experience, it could go the other way around. Or she could work directly with IT.
So, Bryn, just out of curiosity on this, because when we did our pre-call, we were sort of talking about the old days, which some of us might remember here. And we were talking about how marketing comes up with all these kinds of advertising campaigns and things. And then operations is like, and how are we going to go ahead and program the point of sale, to be able to do it, or the digital signage? Have we gotten beyond that?
I think so. I think we're involved much earlier in the conversation. And so we're really planning the campaigns together now versus one team kind of leading the campaign and really driving it and then handing it off to say, like, now go make this happen, which, as we know, can be very stressful. And we kind of feel like we're just scrambling at the end to kind of get things over the finish line. Now we're starting that conversation much earlier in the process. And so, as the product team and the brand team's thinking like, hey, we want to do this thing, we talk about like, okay, from a digital perspective, how can we bring that to life in our channels based off of, timelines, what we're trying to deliver from a customer experience, what brand's trying to deliver from, product, and what the meaning of the campaign is. And so I think just the earlier collaboration has made it a lot more seamless. And operations is involved in those conversations early on as well. So I think just having the teams collaborate more early on has definitely created a lot more efficiencies, and in my opinion, a lot bigger and better campaigns, because now we're bringing more thought partners to the table that understand their perspective, have a good perspective on the channels that they really manage and know their customers in.
But maybe it's easier than it used to be, because the technologies themselves are actually not necessarily sitting in one department or another. They're really sort of crossover. And there's a lot of intuitiveness in understanding both, also on how you design for the customer, I suppose, how they use, the technology. And what we didn't have before is that the customer is actually part of the process. They're actually logged in the technology as well, whether it's a drive-through or whether it's voice or whether it's point of sale. So I suppose it's sort of changed. So what I'd like to do is just sort of get your perspective on this. What are the challenges in dealing, or the challenges or the opportunities in dealing with the customer now being part of the equation? Do you want to address that as to how you deal with the customer facing piece and how they're connected?
I mean, all I would say is for some context here, and then I think Bryn would be better to speak to this one, is I think fundamentally, like, there's two things that have worked well for us and that I think we're seeing across a lot of other organizations. One is digital has a seat at the table on the marketing leadership team. So to Bryn's earlier point, we're planning annual plans, quarterly plans hand in hand. It's baked in from the upfront. I think the other piece is when we talk about building our marketing plan, in a world before we had a ton of customer data, we were starting with the what. So what are we selling? And now we're starting with the who, and having that inform both the what and the how. And that has been a massive unlock, and one that data and having the subject matter experts like Bryn has allowed us to unlock, which has been like just a massive opportunity that's already started to generate ROI.
Yeah, I would build on that and say the customer sits at the center for us. And so we are obsessed with the customer, the data, what are they doing, what behaviors are triggering or not triggering, and really understanding all of the way that our customers are engaging with our different channels, and potentially differently as well. So looking at, how frequently they're coming, what drives their frequency, what campaigns work, and kind of hit either the sales or the frequency or whatever we're trying to accomplish, acquisition. And then looking at what does that trend look like over time as well. So I think we're just really bringing more data into the picture and using that to help not make every decision, but help inform some of the decisions or directions that we want to go. I think it just is allowing us to, again, kind of put the customer at the center. In the end, that's who, we're all here for, is the customer. And so how do we make sure that we're building around what they're expecting or looking for?
Mm-hmm. Well, we actually had somebody submit a question, which we'll just jump into this one because they're asking about the customer data. And Caitlin, you brought it up, the data, because you're really trying to bring the data and have it carry across. But first of all, I don't know who owns the data. It's some part of data analytics and marketing, or it's ops. I'm not exactly sure who it is.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you track that customer data? Because you have all these new sources available to you to feed data you never had before.
Totally. I mean, so the data sits with a team called Insights and Analytics, and they oversee customer data and sales data. So growing that team and having the right people in place, the right third-party partners, so that we can start to match up things like credit card tokens and help, identify customers through loyalty programs and all the rest. It's been very, very helpful. I'd say we've made great progress. We have a long ways to go. Because if you think of loyalty as the powerhouse or our biggest weapon in acquiring identifiable first-party data and then having that on an ongoing basis, loyalty is fairly new to our brand. We weren't the first mover. And so it's going to be a long journey until we have 100% identified customers, but that's where we want to get to. And so for now,
I think that loyalty is sort of new to the quick service segment in general. I mean, whoever thought there would be loyalty programs there? And I guess because of online ordering and because of different payment types, now all of a sudden it's a new opportunity, I would think.
Yes. Well, there's finally a very clear benefit to the consumer to participate. Whereas previously it felt like, what's your phone number? What's your email? It felt like a one-way exchange where they were handing over valuable personal information and not getting anything in return.
So does that impact how you change your operation in the front of the house as far as the how you're treating and working with the guest? The IT side of that when you're connecting with the guest?
That's literally what Bryn is working on day in and day out. So I'll pass to her.
Yeah, I think we're looking at how do we identify the customers and the channels that we don't know who they are at this point, being the drive-through and the front counter. And right now for us, the kiosk, but probably an easier integration into kiosks as it's still kind of more of a digital channel. But when you think about those traditional channels, how can we know who those customers are? Taco Bell has a really broad goal to know 100% of our customers. And so we're really driving towards how do we do that? And so the goal is to create and provide a higher level of hospitality for these customers between the team member and the customer. Our team members want this. They love engaging with our customers. And, today, we still have a lot of customers that come to our traditional channels and our team members know who they are. They come frequently, they know them by name. And so we want to figure out how to create that experience for our customers that are coming frequently, but, potentially using digital channels and we don't know who they are. So I think it really sits at the center, at the crux of this whole thing, is creating a better experience, not just from the customer side, but from the team member providing and having that just deeper relationship with the customer.
Well, that brings, so I'm not going to take us down the labor rabbit hole here, but the thought occurs that with turnover rates in the industry the way they are, having all that data actually informs labor that may be turning over to know who the customer is. But you've already mentioned, Bryn, you mentioned the team who's working in the store wants to use it. So that's great because you got the buy-in and they realize the value of that in creating loyalty in their business. But you also have the added complexity of franchisees. in there. And so how do the franchisees, because I heard Caitlin mention, Bryn, that I think you run like the advisory group and stuff like that. So how do the franchisees adopt and play into it? And are they buying into it? And are they actually, helping to propel and take that forward?
Our franchisees are really excited about what we are planning to do and how this really unlocks so much for their team members. They're probably trying to catapult this faster than we can move it. So, I think there is a lot of buy-in. Of course, there's some franchisees that are a little bit more hesitant, but I think when they look at what the overall goal is and how it is going to help the restaurants, I think learning something new and doing something new and kind of changing the business is always hard. And I feel like obviously during the pandemic, the business completely flipped on its head, so much more digital orders. And I think there's still a little bit of like people trying to catch up to that within the restaurants. And we've been doing everything we can to really help ease some of that pain. And I think digital is a big component of, customers have adopted it and how do we bring the team along with it. And so I think as we've been really getting more into, this experience and really showing franchisees the benefit of what comes out of this integration with loyalty, with knowing our customers and this deeper relationship within our restaurants, they're seeing the positive outcomes. And so I think it's also just telling an easier story that they're more bought into.
Well, if there was any pushback before, there was any hesitancy, or if they didn't understand what digital really was, certainly they were put into it, and they probably took away any question as to the return on investment and why they should adopt it. So does that change? Does how you put out the digital and the marketing programs change when you're dealing with the franchise community and you're dealing with different regional pieces? Because digital has a lot of different options to it and faces.
That's a big challenge, I think. If you just think of, just to start with, like, our responsibility as a franchisor, historically, it's probably been a lot easier and cleaner cut to deliver on that, which is they all pay in, marketing fees, royalties, and it's our responsibility to spend that budget in a way that benefits fairly the entire system. And so when you start to look at digital, the reality is there are regions of the country, there are different franchise organizations that will benefit more and faster than others based on location, customer base, number of restaurants, which have you. So I think that's a piece that we're already trying to work through, which is how much do we drive as a brand from a national perspective versus how do we create the tools, the toolkit, and kind of lead them to water and give them the power to spend their additional marketing funds how they see fit. That would be what I would provide to that question. But Bryn, I imagine you have a lot more.
Well, so wait, hold on. I want to just hold you to something there, because so I'm not asking you to give away any secrets or anything here, but obviously there's always discretionary funds to be spent on a local level. So the question I would have for you is, if you have discretionary funds that are available to you, what kind of digital activities, is a franchisee actually participating in, and are they ones that you're offering in them and sort of like select which ones you want, or are some of them actually helping to drive new innovation with you guys because they're coming up with some things perhaps quicker and more nimble than you can?
I mean, honestly, I would say it's a mix of both. So our franchisees, like they have different levels of discretionary funds. Some want to spend a whole lot on their own regional marketing, which is fabulous, and they do consult us, but they're a full-scale organization that have their own team of marketers, so they're pretty self-sufficient. So in those cases, they may come with ideas and they run them by us to make sure they're compliant, they adhere to menu policy, brand standards, that sort of thing. Others come to us with a problem and ask us to help them find a solution. So I do think it goes both ways.
Bryn, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would agree, with everything Caitlin's saying. I think digital, the challenge with digital is it's at this point where we are, and again, we have big plans to go and kind of scale this at different levels. But you think about your app today, right? And so when you roll something out, you roll it out really for everybody, right? It's not there is personalization and segmentation and things like that that you can do, but really the features and what you're offering is rolled out to everybody. And so really from our perspective, if you're on our tech stack, you're really gaining the benefits of the programs and what we're building from a digital perspective. To Caitlin's point, there are things that they can do um, from a local marketing perspective. We're still building some of those capabilities to really create kind of, I guess, a foundation for them to have an offering of like, hey, I want to pick these things and I want to be able to do this specific digital marketing within my region. Um, but we also, again, like to what Caitlin was mentioning, we have franchisees that have ideas and they come to us and like, how can we make this happen? And we usually try to find a way to support them, and either it's with something that we already have that exists, or we realize, hey, this is probably something bigger that more of our franchisees could benefit from. And so how can we build this and enable this for more of our system?
Well, there are some new things that no one ever thought there would be digital in, and they actually thought that the IT portion of it might be rather boring. But drive-through is one of those areas that all of a sudden is getting like a really big kick, moving forward. And Taco Bell's been getting a lot of press on what they're doing on the drive-through, and we start talking about voice AI and a number of different things there. And again, not putting you on the spot for anything proprietary, but is the drive. So we know we have delivery as one of the new frontiers, but it sounds like drive-through is actually one of the new frontiers as it relates to technology itself, and then adding digital on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the drive-through, it's been very traditional ordering, right? Unless you order ahead and come to the drive-through to pick up your order, there's not much of a digital interaction thus far. As you see, some of our competitors are bringing more digital. Obviously, digital menu boards is a big element, or like really that kind of going back to our earlier conversation on how does tech help feed into this, like building that foundation. So installing digital menu boards in our drive-through is really a foundational component for what we can build on top of that. So we're obviously moving in that direction, and the drive-through is a very large percentage of our business. And so we would be amiss to not focus in that area and understand how we can kind of push it more digitally forward. And so you've obviously seen in the news, we're testing voice AI, and we launched, gosh, was it last year or 2021, Defy Restaurant, which was also a very digital forward restaurant in Minneapolis that has the 4 drive-through lanes, elevators that bring your food down. And so we do realize that that is a big area that we need to focus on. And we are looking to find ways, to our earlier point, of understanding who our customers are in that drive-through and giving them a way to identify themselves.
Well, so to that point, I just sort of keep wondering, why do I even need a drive-through? I mean, I know I need to deliver it, but the more and more I see these screens, big screens, appearing in the cars, I look at that and I say, well, if I just identify myself by near field communications or whatever it is, because I'm geofencing, and I come in and instantly the drive-through just come up on that big screen. And then I go, and why do I actually need the screen at all anyway? Because I'm going to have conversational ordering by voice. So maybe what the way I look at this is that you guys are on the forefront of actually putting the building block technologies in place that become the next generation of drive-through in the vehicle, or no drive-through through the voice, because that's what you have, coming through the phone as well.
Yeah, Caitlin,
I don't know. Did I?
A bit about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that exactly. Yeah, that's a tough one. Sorry.
Well, if you think about it though, I mean, it's just taking an extension of what you're already working with in the digital
Mhm.
side, just applying it somewhere else, isn't it? You know, it just may
Yeah,
be the
yeah,
next generation.
Yeah, I think,
But you're
you
talking
know,
about connecting the customer, right? So you want to know who the customer is. So as soon as you're connected with them, you're getting
yes,
actually more data, right?
totally.
yes, and I think that, again, that is our goal is knowing who that customer is when they enter the drive-through. We know not everybody is going to go down that path, right? As much as we would love it, there are going to be those that, are still more traditional in nature, and we know from some of the research that we've done that the customer wants to look at the menu. It actually, even if they know what they want to order, they want to look at it and be able to confirm that what they want to order is there. And so I think, there's always going to be a need for a menu. I don't think that will go away. But I do feel that the way the customer interacts with that menu, um, if I guess 10 years from now, is going to be very different than the way they interact with it today. I'm sure it'll be more interactive, and rather than just looking at a display that stays somewhat static. I think there will be a lot more interaction in the future.
I mean, it would be really cool to get to a point where what Bryn sees in the order zone or on her app is like Bryn's Taco Bell. Whereas what I see as a vegetarian, maybe I don't see the meat products, or I see everything in a vegetarian expression. Um, I think that would be ideal to get to a point where it's a truly personalized experience. Um, I don't think we're anywhere near that just yet, but I do think that that's the end goal.
Oh boy, you just, the little light bulbs going off on this one, just thinking about what you just said, that in reality, in order to get there, you almost have to personalize through the person's, personal device. You got to
Exactly.
get it to their device because they don't want to, we're going to have those data security issues that are out there and, privacy issues.
Mhm.
But if it's just coming from their device, it's like storing your credit cards,
Exactly.
you're not actually giving it out. Just you actually would have all those what did we just say? It was Bryn's Taco Bell. I mean,
Yes.
that's like a great idea, Bryn's Taco Bell. And I mean, it just got me thinking on this one that it really is the application of what you're creating for the restaurant or creating that experience, but taking it down to the individual.
Totally.
So I wonder who's going to drive innovation for us. Is it the Gen Alpha that we should go ahead and look at for driving the new innovation to see what they're doing, because that'll bring the new stuff in play. And then we just sort of level it out, as Bryn was talking about, for the other generations, how they want to use it.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
mean,
goal.
yeah, I would agree. I think looking at the young end of the Gen Zs, which, it's funny, depending on who you ask. Some people think Gen Z is 6 years old, others know that they're in their mid and late 20s at this point. But I think there's still work to be done to be as relevant and easy as possible with the young Gen Zs. And we really need to start digging into Gen Alpha and actioning against that, because I think the industry at large was a bit slow to really get that there were some pretty seismic differences between Gen Z and millennials, um, and could have acted faster. And I don't think any of us are going to want to deal with that again. So I think it would be in our interest to start focusing on Gen Alpha.
But we should have seen that on the employee side as well. The
Mm-hmm.
employees could have actually driven us that way as well, right?
Totally. Absolutely. I think QSR
So do you
on
see that?
average, customers are just older, and we focus a little bit too much on that, or did historically, and that really shifted following the pandemic, following the overnight acceleration of digital adoption.
So that you've just actually thrown. So besides Bryn's Taco Bell, you now have actually just thrown another one out there.
Mm-hmm.
The concept that QSR as a leader in technology, driving it, because if you look at the age differences of who's in the full service restaurants, and in other segments. So where is the technology innovation actually going to be driven by who the consumer is? It's going to be driven probably in the QSR section, because that's where you have the youngest consumers and employees. you don't have to, you're not serving liquor, so you have younger employees. I mean, so it's
Mhm.
maybe we're going to see the QSR submit. You guys are both on the forefront of where technology and innovation and digital is going to come.
I don't know, Rob, that's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of opportunity.
Yes, I love it. I love the reframe.
Mhm.
Well, let me do this. I mean, it's great having this conversation, but we have a lot of people, and I can see some of the people on here may have their own opinion in some of this, and maybe we just generate our own ideas here. So why don't we open up, sort of like our tabletop discussion here, and if you want to open up your mic and ask a question, go ahead and take a shot. Or I can't see everybody, so I can't ask you to raise your hand. But does somebody want to tee one off? Wow, we're just covering this like too well, right? You know that darn well, if we were sitting around the table right now, that there are people are going to be queuing into this particular discussion here. Anna from Texas.
Hey, Rob. Hey, guys. Thank you so much for doing this. It's been really educational. One thing that we're dealing with at Big Chicken is informing the franchisees early enough about a marketing campaign that's coming, right? And getting them all to agree. And they often have like lots of business partners and stuff like that. So this sounds pretty basic, but how have you, like, what's your timeline for like informing franchisees something's coming, getting them to commit, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, from a holistic marketing standpoint, I'd say we're kind of, so like quarterly, we're always revisiting the annual plan, what's working, what's not. So they do always see the plan at least a year out in broad strokes. And so that's helpful, foundational context, if you will, for when we come back with a more tactical look and we're actually asking them to sign up to execute something. I would say the speed at which we can take something to market drives the timeline. Some things like a traditional food product, the procurement takes a year. So we're asking them to sign up 12 months in advance and come back later with the marketing plan. Some things you can move a lot faster on, especially in the digital and technology space. And so it could be as little as 2 or 3 months out if we're responding to something we see happening in the macro environment or the marketplace. It could also be 6 to 9 months out if it's going to require development work. It's really flexing based on how quickly we can take things to market.
I don't know. Did that satisfy that question? I mean, because it really, getting the marketing out fast too, right? So, Doug Davis, you asked a question in the chat, but you might as well just ask the question live if you're on your microphone. Oh, he's going to make me read this. All right. So we're talking about Digital Playground, and they want to know, if you've begun, not with his mouth full of food. Okay. So I assume he's got a pizza going on there. Have you started, doing some things of the Digital Playground and at the table, and what's the adoption level of guests, at the table, to be, doing something here as well?
Yeah, we don't see as much dining room activity as we used to. And so definitely not, and I'm looking at the question, definitely no, we haven't looked at pay at the table. I think also just QSR, there's always concerns about theft and those types. I think it's a very different experience for QSR. So we haven't looked at anything of that sort. We have talked about, potential like ordering from your phone inside the restaurant. But we also feel like from what we've tried with it, it doesn't seem to really resonate well with a customer. If they're in the restaurant, they're just going to order at the kiosk or they're going to order at the front counter. And so we don't see as much of a, basically go to the table, sit down, place your order, and then wait essentially. So, but from a payment perspective, we do see that there is, an advantage and a desire to want to pay by your phone. And so we are looking at, you know, kind of going back to once we're able to identify that customer in traditional channels, if they have the app and they're a loyalty member and they have a stored payment on their app, then why would we not allow them to just pay with that stored card and not have to actually go through a transaction, you know, handing over a credit card or what have you, cash. And so we are looking at that from a payment perspective, but
Well, you know, it's funny you bring that up though, because it's sort of like if you're trying to get franchisees to buy into something, you have something that they want, they're going to invest, right? Well, it seems like customers all want to start going with, you know, cashless payments, and they want to use digital wallets. And so automatically they're going to be connected, and you're going to have that data and let them drive it. So maybe you want to push the payment methods even in promotional advertising, because you're actually pushing them to be connected.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
right, Bob. I'm sorry to make you do that. My mouth is empty now, finally. One of the things we've noticed is the shift, the generational shift, as more and more people are walking up to the counter. We're actually rolling out EMV devices finally that are working with our point of sale. And we've seen the customers just walk up, reach for their wallet, see the EMV device, and they recognize the Apple Pay and grab their phone and just go that route, because it's so much faster, smoother. It's a simple transaction. You get a reminder right on your phone saying you just spent $12.49 at Monocle's. And so it really works out nice that way. We had been adopting the technology to do a QR code from the table, so you don't have to flag down the next server and all that. Especially, I mean, folks, if I asked everybody to raise their hand who is doing just great and has more than enough employees to cover everything, nobody would raise their hand. We know that. So that's just one more way of alleviating that crunch as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious if others have used that kind of a thing to make that happen.
I mean, I definitely have seen, I do a lot of, you know, customer research, going into customer experience and looking from all realms, not just QSR. And so I'm definitely seeing a lot more of that in the industry in terms of, I would say more fast casual or sit down restaurants for your probably exact reason, you know, labor, just also the customer's used to it now, right? Like, hey, I can quickly order something, pay for it, and it's all in my control. And you know, I don't have to wait for somebody else to kind of complete that transaction for me. So I do think that you'll see it more and more, especially with, again, like what we were talking about through Apple Pay and you know, other payment methods. Why would I not just be able to do it right there from my phone and not have to wait for somebody to kind of complete that transaction for me?
But you're probably also going to generate a lot of ideas as you start with different and unique locations, you know, like a stadium or, you know, an airport or something like that. All of a sudden you have a different type of customer, you know, that's there. And, you know, if you start adding on top of it the concept of, you know, vending or micro market stuff, which I'm sure that Taco Bell is testing something in those areas, that, you know, that also drives, you know, that innovation and the payment types and the speed you're talking about.
I think there are a couple comments in the chat that I found interesting just around cash and cash usage. This is a debate I think we've had a number of times internally, like, do we have cash customers versus credit card customers? The reality is, I think depending on if you're fast casual or QSR, what kind of QSR, you know, some of us, and maybe more than I'm realizing, we have a very large customer base that for certain occasions, and it's usually money management, I'm on a budget, I need to control my spending, they do use cash. I don't think it's quite half of our transactions anymore. I think way back when it was, but it's still sizable and something that we have to keep in mind, and a challenge, I think, as we want to move to this fully digital world is how do you avoid alienating those customers? And what is a benefit you can offer to them to maybe still interact digitally, but be able to transact in cash? I don't know that we've solved that all the way, but I it is a good point they're raising in the chat. Aside from it being required by law somewhere, the cash occasion is a real big one in QSR.
Yeah, and I don't think
Well, listen,
we'll go
go
away
ahead.
from it. Like, sorry, I don't think we'll ever get completely away from it, right? You always have to have a way
Yeah.
for a customer to pay in cash. And I think finding, as Caitlin mentioned, like finding the way to still have that connection with that customer, but allow them to transact how they prefer.
Well, ever and never is a very long time, to quote John Martin from Demolition Man. So we have one question. So Alex, why don't you close us up, because dessert is about to be served and we're going to need to move on to that. So Alex, you had a question?
Yes, and I don't know if that's me cutting out or you cutting out. So if I cut out, I apologize. My question really is more about structural. So earlier, we didn't really want to go down the route of labor, but I'm curious about the labor in regards to the digital, the marketing, and the IT space regarding sustainment versus enhancements. Do you have that bandwidth? Because hearing how you are now engaged at the earlier stage of the marketing planning, are you finding that you're able to provide those enhancements now that you're on earlier? Or are you really more directing towards the existing functionality because sustainment takes a good chunk of your time?
I'm going to answer that in two ways. I think from a campaign perspective, we are looking, it depends on the timing. So if we are far enough ahead, we can look at enhancements and how we want to utilize, something new in our digital channels to support a campaign. If it's timing wise, if we're a little bit tighter or crunched, then I would believe it's more around what do we have today? What can we use that we can then use to support these campaigns? But I think when you're talking about labor, my guess is more on like the restaurant technology side. And so from that perspective, I think as a whole, we're trying to figure out how do we better serve leveraging technology and building more into technology. How can we better serve our team members to make their jobs easier? So what are the things that we can do from an enhancement perspective to again, make it easier for them to kind of maybe take something that would take 5 or 6 steps and take it down to 1, or, how can we automate something that typically was a manual process in the past? And so we do have a very robust roadmap, and we have now a new team that's completely focused on this called our Restaurant Evolution team. That's really looking at, now that, again, going back to kind of our initial conversation on technology, now that we've built a big technology foundation, now what can we start doing to enhance that technology to make the team members' lives easier in the restaurant?
Okay.
Thank you.
Caitlin, did you want to add anything there, or are we
No, I think
good?
Bryn covered it great.
All right. So listen, we're at the end of our designated time here, and I know people have things. There are items in the chat there. We can continue this conversation offline, actually, and you certainly can do it, by the way, through the channels on the IFBTA site. You can actually take it there, and we might want to, Lauren, go ahead and just create a conversation in this particular area to continue it. And clearly, we probably want to think about a chapter meeting in the future, perhaps talking about some of the labor pieces, but maybe not the challenges, but maybe the future, of labor and where we connect with them. So Caitlin and Bryn, I want to thank you for joining us at this meeting. I hope you'll join us for other meetings in the future, and everybody else for joining us today on this Q4 virtual chapter meeting. And I want to wish everybody a happy holidays, and that you were able to join us today. And we'll look forward to continuing the conversation, going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lauren.